Welcome aboard the Logos Hope.
You may have heard that our goal is to share knowledge, help, and hope with the people of the world.
But what do we mean by hope? What is this hope that unites 400 people from 50 different countries on board the Logos Hope?
Our ships have visited over 1,400 ports in more than 150 countries.
And we have witnessed the lostness of man.
And we know of no other hope for mankind than the hope which we have in the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
People look to science, politics, education, economic development, or religion.
Trying to find a solution for society problems.
But those things don't fix the fundamental problem.
Hey, good evening everyone. Well, you may be looking at that and thinking, where's the sound? And we're here as well wondering where the sound is as well. So we are trying to work on that right now, and I think probably the easiest thing that we're going to be able to do is just to reboot our computers again and restart. But that means using a new link. So just if you stay on these, if you're on YouTube, stay on there, and if you're on Facebook, stay where you are. We will repost some new links for you in a minute, and then you can click on that new link, and that hopefully will have resolved our audio issues. So again, apologies for that. Just stay on where you are, and we'll post the new links in a minute on YouTube and on Facebook, and hopefully then that will resolve our audio issues. So sorry about that again. It'll be probably, I guess, maybe 5 or 10 minutes until we can resolve that technical issue. But do stay online with us. You're in for a great evening this evening. We've got some great guests and some wonderful videos, and hopefully it'll work. Okay, we'll see you in a minute.
Music on the video?
Great. Okay, well, we've managed to work out some of the gremlins in the system there. Apologies for just that. There's just so much technical side of things around this room to pull off something like that. Big shout out to Jaron, our AV guy, for working on that. He's done some amazing things. Well, good evening, good afternoon, good morning to you wherever you are in the world today. Thank you for joining us again for this second of our live links, celebrating 50 years of ministry of OM ships, going all the way back to the launch of our first ship, the Logos, back in 1971. My name is Andy Juliff. I'm from the UK originally. I spent a number of years on board with my family. The ship that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about this evening, the Logos 2. And we've had literally thousands of people watching on YouTube or watching on Facebook. The event we did several months ago now with George Verwer and other people as well, just reflecting back on the ministry of the Logos as she sailed out of Rotterdam to London for an incredible number of years of ministry back then. But tonight we want to commemorate another vessel that we actually launched into ministry on this very day back in 1990 when we sailed from Amsterdam to London in England. And the start of the ministry of Logos 2, though, had its roots in probably one of the most difficult seasons that we've experienced as a ship ministry, where one night back on the 4th of January 1988, the Logos ran aground and we lost that first ship that we ever owned in very, very unexpected circumstances. And Graham Wells, who was the director on board at that time, and Debbie Miroff share some of their experiences about that fateful night when we lost the Logos.
My wife, before we went to sleep that night, she really felt the Lord telling her that I'm going to do something that will amaze you. When she went to bed, she actually went to bed fully clothed, and she packed her bag for her 3.5-year-old daughter. She really felt that God was telling her to be prepared, didn't know what for.
A number of other people, even a week before, a few days before, had either a dream or a special word from the Lord that something was going to take place on this voyage.
The guideboats had left the Logos after piloting her out to sea, when unbelievably the ship hit submerged rocks in the Beagle Channel.
We all woke up to this incredible grating sound as the ship just charged onto these rocks in the Beagle Channel.
Things came off the shelves onto the floor, and you knew immediately this was no ordinary thing. The engines had stopped, and immediately people were running through the hallways doors saying, "Put on your life jackets, don't panic."
We never believed that the ship would have to be abandoned. We were confident that we would get the ship off the rocks at high tide next morning.
For 4 hours, the crew sat patiently with life jackets on, waiting for high tide to lift them off the rocks. Suddenly, around 4 o'clock in the morning, the ship started taking on water in the hull and listing 20 degrees to port. The captain gave the order to abandon ship.
Well, it was kind of unexpected because they called everyone to the starboard side, and then afterwards they said, crew to the lifeboat stations, and I'm part of the crew and I had my lifeboat ticket, so it's like I was one of the first people to go up there. And we had to crank out the boats and whatnot, and it was a miracle we got the boats off.
Even then I thought, we can't abandon her. She's our home. She's everything. And even then we thought we'll be able to come back. We'll be able to re-enter the ship and at least get some of our things.
There was fear inside of me in that situation, but there was also a sense that, well, God, this is your ship. We didn't ever believe that this would happen. This is your ship, and if you want it to end its voyage at the ends of the earth, then that's for you to decide.
Miraculously, the entire Logos crew, including families with small children, escaped the ship without even being injured. No lives were lost, but all of their personal possessions had to be left behind, as well as $700,000 worth of literature, 3 vans, and all of their equipment. As the crew of the Logos left the ship, little did they know that they would never see their home again.
We all had special things like souvenirs we got, and addresses of people we've met, and our Bibles and stuff. Everything was lost, but we just have to, like Paul had the attitude of counting everything like in the King James dung. That's rubbish, I guess, but we just have to consider that so we can gain Christ.
After 17 years of ministry in over 100 countries, the Logos has now had to be turned over to the Chilean Navy, who will either sink it or use it for target practice. This grand old ship that once belonged to a Danish king will never again ply the waterways of our world, bringing its message of hope to the people in port cities and beyond. But the spirit and vision of the Logos will not sink with these few thousand tons of steel. What do you think you've learned or gained through all this?
I sense very much that the Lord has shown me again, if the world is going to be evangelized, it's going to take cost. There's going to be sacrifice. We cannot expect everything just to flow nicely and come together easily. We're in a warfare, and we have got to be willing to sacrifice, to reach the ends of the earth.
We can see in our minds a Logos too. We'd like to believe that she is now sitting in some port somewhere, and the Lord has her specially designed with just the capacity that we need. And in Logos, as we've known her, she was in many ways not big enough for the crowds that came to her every day. And there would have been a great program of trying to expand her, but even then, it would not have been big enough. So perhaps the Lord sees this as a shortcut in advancing the ministry a little faster than we would have.
Well, welcome back again. It's great to have you with us if you just joined since that. And certainly there's many of you coming from all over the world at the moment: Mexico, France, Brazil, Romania, South Africa, Austria, the UK, many countries in Europe, the States. So it's just fantastic to have you all with us this evening. As you saw from that video there, that was a pretty traumatic experience. But after that, we really noticed just an incredible outpouring of generosity from churches and Christians all around the world when they heard the news that we had lost the Logos. And just as Debbie said there, many people echoed that same sentence that she did, that there must be a Logos too, the ministry must continue. And leading the ship's ministry at that time was Dale Roton, who of course was there at the beginning of OM's ministry as well, right at the beginning with George Verwer. And he reflects back about losing the Logos and the reaction of leaders and others to the idea of getting another ship to replace the Logos. Let's hear what Dale says for a minute.
You know, when we had the Logos, we were just constantly amazed at what God was doing through this ship, through young people that never knew hardly what a ship was. We were convinced God is going to always use that ship, keep her going. Well, so we were shattered when we heard Logos has hit its end. No more Logos. It took us a while to comprehend, and we're thankful for many people that stood with us and by us during those times. When we first got the Logos, there were many Christians, mature Christians, high church people that thought, listen, this thing isn't going to last. It's not going to do God's business. But they were surprised. We were surprised. God was doing far more through that ship than we had imagined. New ideas, new ministries, new people. It was something where we were thrilled and very eager to see how is this going to function in real life. We want to be there to see it. We saw it's not just simply OM with the ship, it's the Lord with the ship. And there were many people who had expressed question mark about ship ministry that came around and said, you know, God is using that ship. God has spoken to my cousin, and a whole list of people that they've mentioned where God was at work, and they believe that he would continue to be at work. But now, what are we going to do? We've lost the ship. What is the answer? We had prayer meetings where we were praying, Lord, show us, guide us, lead us. We had many Christian leaders who were encouragers and said, listen, if I can help you in any way, let me know. This is something God has been using that ship over the last few years. He'll continue using. It'll just take time. And so we had, on the one hand, real enthusiasm, expecting that we're going to see things that we hadn't seen before. And at the same time, some real challenges. Life was much different when without that ship. One thing that amazed me and also amazed many other people was how God provided the needed personnel for the ship ministry. We needed a captain. We needed deck officers. We needed marine engineers. And the list goes on. And there were times when we were in a port and someone would ask a silly question like, who's going to be the captain to lead us to the next port? And we say, well, we don't know who that person's going to be, but we're praying and believing. And so this has happened many times, and we believe God is going to continue doing that many times in the future. And we're eager to see how he puts it all together. Mates and engineers and cooks and all sorts of people from literally around the world. And it's something really wonderful to behold. Many thanks to all of you who have been praying for the ship ministry. We believe the real anchor is the prayer meetings around the world, all over the world, people praying, believing with us. That's how God has chosen to run not only the ship ministry, but any ministry. And we're convinced, we've seen it over years in the past, and we believe he's going to do it again and again and again. And just my main request to those of you listening to this is pray with us. We need prayer. We need God to stretch forth his hand and show us that he is in control, and it is going to happen.
Pretty quickly after that, God led us to a ship to replace the Logos. It was called the Antonio Lazaro. We've got a picture of it here right now. It was a ferry that was running between North Africa and Spain. And we sailed the Antonio Lazaro from Greece, and we had a quick stop in Gibraltar, and we sailed it up to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, where we renovated it for a little over a year. And then it went on from there and sailed into ministry for a further 18 years. But we want to just show you just a short clip of the ministry of the Logos 2 in those years. Well, we literally had many thousands of people that have been sailing on board the Logos 2 over the years that we had her. And one of those was Ian Curry and his family that have been many years with the ministry on Logos 2, on Doulos, and just for a short season on Logos Hope as well. And I caught up with him a few days back, and I asked him just for some of his memories and highlights, and he really just shares again some amazing stories of God's provision that have marked this ministry over 50 years. So let's catch up with Ian and see what he says. Ian, just tell us a little bit about your journey with OM and OM Ships, how you started it, where you've been, and yeah, just a few things like that.
Well, OM Ships, I was first on board Logos when I was 9 years old.
Wow.
Next to Belfast, the HMS Belfast there. And my Sunday school teacher at that time said, if you're a good boy, you can walk on this ship one day. And one day I did. And so sailed Logos until the shipwreck. Was on Doulos very short time, usually as a relief. Then on to Logos 2 and the very early days of Logos Hope. So I had sailed all 4 ships.
You had an unusual job actually as well, because you're the radio officer. We don't have those anymore, right?
Yeah, no, you don't. I'm obsolete. No, my background was in radio, television, and telecommunications, and electrical engineering, all of that good stuff, very technical stuff. But so on Logos was running audio visual, and they were always looking for radio officers, and I figured, well, that's an easy job. I mean, I can do that. And so you only need me at sea. Actually, it was much more complicated than I thought it would be. But so for Logos 2, oversaw the electrical install and the audiovisual install, and then sailing ran the technical side, so audiovisual and in port, and then at sea, the radio operator or radio officer's job. I'm going to go back to Logos 1 just very briefly, and we were in, I think it was Baltimore, or who knows, America anyway, and we had a generator blow up, and I remember being the gangway watch that day, and the first guy up the gangway was a guy from Todd Electric, and he said, I need to see your boss. I said, oh, well, you can't come on board yet, we're not clear. But the really short version of the story is, well, if you need anything, let me know. And jokingly, I said, well, if you've got an old DC generator, we could use one. We just blew one up. I'll talk to him. He came back the next day. The serial number on the item that he found was 1 digit different than the one we had blown up. If you dig deep into that story, Mike Pointer, the Marine Superintendent at the time, would tell you about that. The details of that, it had to have a stub shaft, it had to have a keyway, it had to run at 480 revs, which was really weird. It had to be DC. It had to be Bureau Veritas approved. It was remarkable.
Yeah.
And one of those. Now, the reason I tell you that is that when you move then to Logos 2, and all of a sudden you start needing stuff, and all of a sudden things aren't falling into place. The history of the ships and the history of how God is and how he provides and his faithfulness and his consistency. I was reading Psalm 37 this morning. Now, if you take a quick look through it, you're going to find it's all about the evil people. No, forget all that. It actually says in the Psalm, forget all them. Verse 7, be still. And how often do we do that? Be still. And Psalm 46 will tell you, and know that I am God. But in Psalm 37 there, be still. And just when it's all going, when it's all going wrong, be still and let God do his thing. And over and over and over again, that's something I learned.
Great, Ian, thanks so much. Really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today, and hope to see you on board an OM ship again at some point in the future. Ian's flying at the moment for Delta Airlines. But we hope maybe one day you'll come back and share with us again. Thanks, Ian. Bless you.
See you now. Bye.
It's my privilege to introduce you now to men who were leading the ship ministry on Logos 2, ex-directors of the Logos 2 for a number of years. We've got Manfred Schaller here with us from Germany. Manfred was director on board the Logos 2 for a couple of years and is also a board member of our ministry at the moment. And then we have Peter Nicol. Peter is originally from South Africa and also has spent many, many years with OM, not just on Logos 2, although he was the director on board of Logos 2 as well with his family. Also been on Doulos, led OM UK, and done a whole range of things as well. Peter's joining us from Carlisle this evening. So welcome to the both of you. Thanks for being with us this evening. If I can start with you, Manfred, why don't you just tell us for a moment where and when you were on board the Logos 2?
The word Logos 2 I heard for the first time in Buenos Aires, actually, when the people who survived the Logos accident came to Buenos Aires, and Dale Roten and I were receiving them. And when they were walking down the gangway, there was a lady from Argentina, and she shouted loud, Logos dos. That was the first time I ever heard that. And then I became director of Logos 2 in Amsterdam in March of 1990.
Okay.
And I was on board till July of 91.
Wow, so really in the very early years of the ministry then.
The main year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Peter, how about you? Just tell us a little bit your experience and history, where and when you were on board the Logos 2 with your family.
Yeah, we had originally been on Doulos in 88, 90, and I went back to being a pastor in East London and got a call from Dale Roten asking, would you come and help? And we came on board the end of 92 through to the middle of 97.
Yeah. Now we're talking this evening about Logos 2, and of course it isn't about ship and steel and a tool in a sense. But we want to hear some of the stories about the incredible ministry that happened, the fruit and the results of which we're actually still living through today. So I just want to go back for the two of you for a moment to just some of the stories that you remember from your time on board. And there were some amazing stories, and I know it's hard to kind of tell them all, but just maybe Manfred, you just start and just tell us a few of the impressions that you had from those early years in the 90s when you were on board with your family.
You see, the special thing about this time is that the Iron Curtain was falling.
Okay.
The Berlin Wall went down in November of 1989. That was the time when the Logos 2 was in Amsterdam. And so one country after the other was in rebellion against the old system. And so it was a very unique time. And so when the ship sailed, we went first from Amsterdam to London, and then later on we went to Bremen. And there the amazing thing happened that we collected Christian books from Switzerland, used Christian books from Switzerland, Austria and Germany. And we had about 20 tons of Christian books when we sailed into Rostock, East Germany.
Yeah.
And there we had visitors, and people expressed that they never thought it would ever be possible for people to actually visit a ship in a port in the DDR. Because 1 year before, the port was totally closed to the public. There was no way, but God had opened the door. And we gave these books away, and many Christians, for the first time, had a chance in this volume getting Christian books. We had about 200,000 books. We sold them for 10 East German marks each. And at the same time, we had a tremendous ministry as well. People coming on the ship, national television came and just showed this incredible mission that was there in their door.
Yeah, wow, amazing. Peter, you were on board a little later, different area of the world as well. Just tell us a couple of your memories from your time on board.
Yeah, many wonderful memories of ministry and people on board. But I think one of the things that stands out for me, we were in Spain, and our guys befriended a German drug addict who had been in the community, and he had hair down to his waist, and he was invited on board, come and have a shower, come and have a meal, come and chat. And after a few days, I noticed this clean, short-haired guy helping wash dishes in the galley, and I realized this was the same guy. And when I asked what happened, he had come on board and he had told his parents he wouldn't cut his hair until Christmas and Easter happened on the same day. And the miracle was, as he was befriended by folk on board, as they witnessed to him, as they shared life with him, and he heard the story of Jesus, his coming at Christmas, his death and resurrection at Easter, he gave his life to the Lord. And as he finished his prayer, he looked up and he said, you know, for me, Christmas and Easter have happened today. And he went, had his hair cut, got smartened up, and we were able to leave him with the Drug Rehabilitation Center and his life was transformed. And I think for me, that was a picture of so many other memories of transformation through ministry. If I just think of some individuals who came on board, I can think of one particular girl who came out of a broken background, a devastated family, came on board almost like a whipped dog, just shy and timid and insecure. But by the time she left 2 years later, was clear in her calling, clear in her identity, and had been transformed into somebody who had something to contribute and got involved in youth ministry and in helping other young people find meaning and significance in their life. And I look around the world today, and there's so many people who were on board Logos 2 who found God's calling for the least reached, for mission. And for me, those are the memories, is people whose lives were changed, transformed, and are still serving the Lord today.
Fantastic. Thanks, Peter. Yeah, so true, isn't it? Just the impact of lives, the impact on individual lives of people, changed lives all around the world, many, many continents. Manfred, you, again, I think you were, did you sell in Africa as well? You were,
yes.
And I mean, that's, again, one of the amazing things about the ministry is that it reaches all different sections of society as well. You've even met a couple of heads of state sometimes, I think. Just maybe share one of, just give us another story just of how God has moved in and through you and the ministry.
I think what I remember well was in Sierra Leone, the President Mo came to the ship, and actually his whole cabinet came. I will never forget the whole army of Mercedes-Benz driving into the port, and they had cleaned up the port like never before. And it was so amazing because the lineup people had written the speech that the President then gave on board for the opening. Yeah. And he praised Jesus and told the whole gospel, you know, even he himself was not maybe a follower of Jesus. But I think it was a tremendous opportunity to just have an opportunity to speak to the leaders of that country at the opening. And also about 80,000 people then walked up the gangway in Sierra Leone as well. Yeah. Another port I remember well was Cape Verde Islands, and there also the President came. And it was amazing. He was so open. The only thing that happened was at the opening, you know, I tried to find something similar between the President and me, and it was that he had also no hair. So I wanted to make a joke, but sometimes when you make a joke and it goes to translation, it didn't go over very well. I said, I heard once, where there is brain, there is no hair, and nobody laughed. And at the end of the opening, someone came to me and said, why did you speak so badly about the President? I said, why? Well, you said where there is no hair, there is no brain. That was what the translator understood. So that was maybe not the best opening that we experienced, but at least something I remember very well, and it had a tremendous impact, I think, in these islands.
Wow. That's a very sensitive joke.
Oh,
with the company that is going. But Peter, I remember we had the privilege of sailing on board together, but do you remember those times in North America? I mean, it was just remarkable to spend a good few months there. What was just some of your memories maybe about that time as we were in the USA and in Canada?
Yeah, many precious memories. Because of the Jones Act, we did Mexico, USA, Canada, USA, Mexico. And a real privilege to be involved in that. But I think many folk don't realize how the Logos 2 paved the way for the current Logos Hope ministry. We changed the whole way we did ministry for the west coast of the US, Canada, and Mexico, and focused on high-touch ministry, which we had not done before on Logos 2. And some folk would remember just the crisis we had sailing from Panama Dry Dock, where we had a brief 5 days, I think it was, to get our whole ship's mentality changed from what we used to do to running tours, to putting a cafe in the aft lounge, to doing donor dinners, thanking people who had given for Logos 2 and who had invested in the ministry and looking for more. And the whole turnaround of the ship in terms of ministry culture was quite phenomenal. But it worked so well, having this high-touch ministry, that it laid the foundation for what we see today on Logos Hope.
Yeah, great memories. Well, thanks to the both of you. Really appreciate you taking the time to be with us this evening and just giving back some of your memories of some of those incredible years on board. Trust you'll have a great evening, and thanks for being with us. We want to show you
Thank
now
you.
just a couple of images of the life and ministry of the Logos through the 90s and the early 2000s, just really featuring again just some of the different ports we went to and the ministry activities we were doing during that time. I wonder how good your knowledge is of the Logos 2. Maybe you sailed on board, maybe you just visited for a short time, maybe you just read the Logos, well no, there hasn't been a Logos 2 story yet, but maybe that'll be written at some point, sometime. But I wonder how good your knowledge is. And we've got a couple of questions for you now, and maybe you can just have a think about these and see if you know the answers to these questions. How well do you know the Logos 2? Here's the first question, maybe you know the answer to this one. Question 1, what was the largest number of visitors to visit Logos 2 in a single day? Maybe some of you that are watching were even on board on that day, but that is something that I'll come back in a minute and tell you the answer to that question. Question number 2 is, what was the longest voyage of the Logos 2? The longest voyage that the Logos 2 ever sailed on. Question number 3, where was the Logos 2 registered? And you've got 4 options there: Malta, Singapore, the UK, or Germany. And 3 more questions. Question number 4, when was the Logos 2 built? Do you know when the Logos 2 was built? 1960, 1965, 1968, or 1970? Question 5, what was the number of crew and staff beds that were on board the Logos 2? Was it 200? 208, 214, or 220? And finally, what was the name, and I said this earlier if you were paying attention, what was the name of the Logos 2 before we purchased that vessel? There's 6 questions there. Have a think about those for a minute, And in a couple of minutes, I will come back and tell you the answers to that question after I've had a bit of a chat with this gentleman that is sitting next to me right now. Some of you may know him. It is great that we have Ronnie with us, Ronnie Lappin. Ronnie is no stranger, I'm sure, to many of you that are on the call today. Ronnie's been quite some time with the ministry. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years?
A few more.
How many years have you actually been with the ship's ministry altogether?
Well, it all depends how you count, actually. I started in 1978.
Wow.
I was officially 4 years away from the ship ministry because I left, would you believe it, and went to work with OM Russia for 1 year. But I was living in Finland at the time, working with OM Russia.
Yeah.
And then 3 years I was working with the Adult Education Center of Helsinki University. But in those 3 years, I was over in Cuba, I was down with the two ships reunion, I was over in Vladivostok, so one simply couldn't get away from the ships.
So a lot of your time with the ship's ministry is actually spent preparing ports, in a sense, to... okay.
Finding out where these ships should go to.
Now, Ronnie, we are talking this evening about the Logos 2. And you've spent a lot of time working on all our ships, actually, all 4 of them. But we're zooming in tonight on the Logos 2. And when we first purchased the Antonio Lazaro that we called the Logos 2, then that was...
You've answered one of the questions.
Whoops. Okay, no bonus point for that one. But when we first purchased that ship, there were a lot of very amazing, world-changing events going on at that particular time that also had an impact on the visit of Logos 2 to a certain region. Can you just fill us in for a little bit, for a moment, on that, and just give us your memories on that particular season of lineup where the Logos 2 went?
You mean specifically to the Soviet Union, to Eastern Europe at that time, because Eastern Europe was opening up, and it was an amazing thing that the ship could visit 5 different ports in the Baltic region, right just before the Berlin Wall had come down. The ship could go to East Germany just before the two countries started using the same currency as well. And even there, the first newspaper to write about the visit of the Logos 2 to Rostock was the communist newspaper, as well as the former communist TV of East Berlin, etc.
Amazing.
Quite amazing.
I think we've actually got some photographs, right, Jaron? If we look at some of these.
So these photographs are from the USSR.
Wow. Okay.
And this is a church which was turned into a factory for many, many years during the Soviet regime, and then turned into a church again, and they were in the job of painting up. So it was God's factory, I basically call it. And this is Pastor Nikolaev, who was really instrumental, used by God to get the ship into the Soviet Union. But let me say something more about this whole thing, because this is a visit that should really not have happened. I had been to visit Leningrad back then, and also Moscow with Peter Conlon, and we basically came back with nothing.
Wow.
And then we left a letter for the Leningrad Soviet, and then sitting back here in this office, I got a letter back from the Leningrad Soviet, which was basically niet, no, negative, we deny your visit. Politely put that there's a sailing regatta taking place, there's no room for your ship in the port of Leningrad. So that was the official response from the Leningrad Soviet. But I did not believe that that was God's response. So I went back to Leningrad 2 more times. And on each time, nothing changed at all. Absolutely nothing. We got to see no officials. And then I remember sitting in my hotel in Leningrad together with Rene Rodriguez, because he was there with me on one of those trips. And it so happened that it was just coming back to Finland. The ship was in Helsinki. Everybody was praying for an open door there in Russia at the time. I went back and I thought, what did I do wrong? What's gone wrong here? How did I totally misread this situation? Because now I need to go back to Finland and I need to tell everybody on the ship the visit is off. It's simply not going to happen. So 1 hour before I was going to call the ship, I get a phone call from somebody from Campus Crusade I'd never ever met. He's phoning my phone in Finland. Don't ask me how he got the phone number. And he's phoning from the mayor's office in Leningrad to say that the ship could come. So, you know, something that should never have happened was that ship visit to Leningrad.
Oh my goodness, that is amazing. Well, you can't write that if you couldn't imagine
No.
it. I mean, those are very turbulent days, right? In the
Yeah.
just the opening up of the Eastern European area and the former Soviet Union. There's one story as well that's pretty legendary in OM ships about paying for some port fees. Can you just tell us?
Yeah. Well, could I say that the ship had about 8,000 Bibles on board, 4,000 New Testaments, I think it was. We quickly went through these slides. I don't know if you could actually do it again, and I could make some comments on earlier slides if that's possible. That one we've seen, and that we've seen, that's okay. And this is the official opening. That's the deputy mayor of Leningrad, although they didn't have mayors at the time, and there's Manfred there with him, and Mark Knight in the photo. Now this here is a very important photo, because there you're actually seeing Alexei Bychkov, who's the General Secretary of the Baptist Union, and Commandant is the other one. And these men are very instrumental because they did all of the negotiations with the KGB in Moscow for our visit to get the ship in. There's so much going on behind the scenes that we simply didn't know what was going on. We were not in control of it at all. So they came up to visit the ship for the official opening, and this Alexei Bychkov, he tells the story to everybody on board at the devotions on board the ship, that 70 years ago, somebody had a vision of a white ship coming to Russia, 70 years before the ship comes. And this was at a time when Holy Russia was in turmoil. This vision of a white ship sailing up the river Neva into Leningrad, told that the vessel would bring a message of hope to the Soviet people, far greater than the consequences of the revolution. And it would be an enduring and a far-reaching message of hope that is brought. So that's amazing that, that this really was a fulfillment of this vision of a white ship coming there to Leningrad. Well, we were a long time trying to get permission for the books to come into the country, and only at the last minute did we actually get the permission. I think there's a slide there of many of the books coming off the ship as well. And you know, it was an exhibition. We were not allowed to sell anything on shore. We were not allowed to sell anything on board. So people would come on board and say, what's the use of your bringing the ship here and you're only exhibiting books? Well, we were quite happy when many hundreds of Bibles and New Testaments simply disappeared from our shelves on board the ships, and we did not tell any of the officials that these books were simply disappearing from the shelves on board the ship. But we were able to get the permission to give these books to the people at the end, and also I think it was 2 million tracts. Now there also you saw ship people stamping tracts, and we were stamping tracts which were going to be with the churches where people could go for follow-up as well. And we had a tracting day, and 156, I think it was, of the ship, 135 ship's crew went out with believers to every single district, rayon of Leningrad at that time, distributed in a few hours 290,000 tracts. Wow. And you would stand at the metro with tracts, and people would just be so happy to take them. They would come back with flowers, they would come back with an ice cream, they would come back with a kiss for you as well. They were so happy, and some people even offered money to get a tract. And then there are views there also of there's a tract, and that's the Aurora 1917, which announced the Russian Revolution. And here was God's ship bringing a revolution of love to the city of Leningrad. So much in contrast to that ship which announced the beginning of the October Revolution as well. But we also were given permission to do open airs, which was quite amazing. And you would go next to the metro, and you would just start up with some songs and do preaching, and you'd easily get a crowd of 100, 200 people. In one open air alone, 50 people raised up their hands, said that they wanted to be prayed for, and people would even be in tears also. And people would be coming behind asking, do you have a Bible? Do you have a Bible? And as soon as the open air was finished, people would rush forward to look at the literature and get literature. So those were amazing days with that whole visit to Russia. Quite amazing.
Remarkable.
Really so. So the one story that you're on about is a story that you see me sitting there. The conferences were amazing. We had 25 film shows as well.
Yep.
And people would be waiting up to 2 hours to come on board to go to the film show. Then we would have the film show. Then you'd be on board for hours afterwards discussing about the film show. Now, you would not think that you'd come to the Lord watching the Ben-Hur film, but people in Russia came to the Lord watching the Ben-Hur film.
Wow.
It was quite amazing. So there are just some other photos. Even at the farewell, 10 people who'd received tracts, because this Żyzny tract that our people had been stamping on the voyage from Helsinki to Leningrad at that time, that was distributed during our visit, and 10 people who'd received that tract were there at the farewell meeting in the church on shore and gave their lives to Christ.
Wow.
Even then. So this is the payment for the whole ship's visit to Russia. 2 boxes of books, which Renee and I carried on board a boat which went up the canals of Leningrad, and there we went there, and they treated those Bibles as though it was gold when they opened it. And with those 2 boxes of Bibles, we paid for the whole ship visit to Leningrad.
Wow.
Quite an amazing thing.
Well, Ronnie is going to come back to us in a minute again and share some more stories about the life and ministry of Logos 2. But I just had a chance to catch up recently again. We talked with a couple of ex-directors of the Logos 2 this evening. And I caught up with another ex-director recently. That was Chaco Thomas. Chaco is originally from India and spent a number of years on board with his family as well. And I asked him about the impact of the ministry on his life. He sailed quite a lot of the time around Caribbean and Latin America, so we hear a few stories about his time in that region of the world. So let's listen to what Chaco says.
Welcome to you, Chaco. It's great to have you with us. Thanks for taking the time to be with us. Maybe you can just tell us a little bit about where you're from originally, your family, and how you joined OM, how you joined OM ships. That would be interesting to know.
It's a very long story. I'm from the south of India called Kerala.
Yeah.
And I joined OM in India in 1966. Wow. That's a long time ago. And served with OM India for 7 years, mostly in North India. Mass evangelism, discipleship training, and all that. And then the Lord brought me on to Logos in 73, and I was linked with the Logos for the next 5 years. A lot of the times taking teams inland to other countries where the ship was and other things. Yeah. Then in 78, got married with another OMer from Singapore, my wife, of a similar background.
Yeah.
And we went to the doulas. We were on it for 5 years. First year I worked as conference coordinator. The next 2 years I was the personnel director, they called in those days. And then I was a training and associate director for 2 more years and left for India and worked with a church for a while. India for 3 years, then back to Singapore for 4 years. Then I got this call from Dale Rotan to consider coming back to the doulas. So went back on the doulas and ended up on the Logos 2. Logos 2 in 1992, September. Okay. In South America. Yeah, that's my story.
Yeah, wow. So you were the director on board there for a couple of years then, yeah, on Logos 2.
Yes, it was a privilege to be there for those 2 years. And we saw many, many answers to prayers. And we visited about 7 ports in Argentina, 4 ports in Brazil, and 4 ports in Venezuela up north, Colombia 2 ports, and lots of ports in the Caribbean from Puerto Rico to Trinidad. And God opened a wide open door. Although the ship was not the best for accommodation, for 200 people, only 3 inboard cabins, the rest were all shared ones. So it was not easy for families, but for ministry-wise, the ship was fantastic. We had a room for 400 people, another one for, I think, close to 100 people, and a large book exhibition. And it was going on all the time. And we enjoyed lots of meetings. And the main impression I have 28 years later now is that the ship on the ship, and through the ship, we saw lots and lots of people making commitment to become believers in Christ, and also a lot of them making commitments to missions. And so when I went back to India, I was happy to see some 500 Latinos serving God in India. And of course, they were going all over the world. We are trying to mobilize them into the Arab world and all the rest. So great time. As for memories of the ship, of course, my own prayer life went up because I had to really depend upon God to help the ship. I was the first Asian non-European director of an OM ship. So it needed some adjustments for the ship people and for me. And so we saw a lot of answers to prayer. It was wonderful. Some of my experience, a great miracle took place when we were planning to go from Rosario in Argentina to Santa Fe, up a river.
Yeah.
For some years, no ships have ever gone up that river.
Yeah.
And we were not sure whether we will be able to go. I think we needed about close to 3 meters of water to go up the river. And of course, the river needed to stay that high for us to come back 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
And to the last minute, we were not sure whether we could make it, but our lineup team was already there preparing the program. And at the last minute, the captain decided we would go. And just happened few days before that, we began to see the water level rising, although there was no rain where we were living. But apparently way up there, maybe 1,000 miles north, there was some rain, I suppose. The water level began to rise, and we had enough water to sail up. And we did sail, although on the way up for an hour, we got stuck on the sand bed, wiggled out of it, and carried on. And when we got to Santa Fe, the port authority, the port manager, I guess, he said, God is in this ship, because he hasn't seen a ship come up for years. I think 6 or 7 years, no ship had been there. And after 2 weeks of great time, great ministry, the highest book sales we ever had in any of the Latin American ports. And we sailed back down to to south of Argentina. So that was a big deliverance. Otherwise, the Logos 2 will still be sitting in Santa Fe.
Wow, fantastic. God even controlling the elements there. Chaco, thanks so much for being with us. It's great to hear these stories about how God has used you and used the ship's ministry. God bless you. Thanks again.
Thank you. It was great years for me. Thank you.
Good.
Great, amazing stories. Thanks again, Chaco, for sharing the ministry of the Logos 2 in Latin America and in the Caribbean as well. So, Ronnie, back to you. One of the things I'm just always amazed about with the ship's ministry is just the opportunities that we have to go to different ports around the world, different regions of the world. And of course, one of the regions we've been to a number of times now is the Near East, the North African region of the world. And you've been right at the heart of preparing some of those visits of different ships to that region. Can you just share with us again, you shared very passionately and powerfully about the visit of the Logos 2 to Eastern Europe and to Russia, right place at the right time, but also there have been some amazing God stories of how God opened up the way for the ship to be in North Africa and the Middle East as well. So just share with us for a moment some of your experiences with that.
Yeah, they say, I left my heart in San Francisco, I think the song is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I left my heart in Tripoli, in Libya, is my song. Actually, yeah, Libya is a country which is very special to me, and that's because of the fact that both Logos 2 and Logos Hope could go to Libya. And actually, we received an email here from a group, from a person we did not even know at all, saying, oh, we would like your ship please to come to Libya. So I wrote back to them saying, well, actually, we need an official government invitation to be able to come to any country. Could you please approach the government and ask them to write to us? I said, this is the government writing to you of Libya.
Wow.
So actually, before we even went, Lloyd Nicholas and myself, on a survey, 2 people from Libya came to our offices here in Mosbach to suss us out and see what we were like. And to introduce themselves and what they would want from a ship visit to Libya. So that's basically how the whole thing started.
Wow.
Yeah, and then Lloyd and I did go and did a survey of both Tripoli and Benghazi at that time for a Logos 2 visit. And I remember even sitting there in meetings and you wouldn't know what's going on half the time. It was in Arabic, although they called me Fox Desert because they thought I understood everything they said anyway. Not Desert Fox, Fox Desert. And you would hear them speaking and all of a sudden you'd hear OM in the background and I'd say to myself, what is that? And just carry on with the discussion as well. But the whole visit to Libya was very, very special. The Libyan authorities wanted to show that Libya's a sort of friendly nation as well. So they really wanted to go the extra mile to make sure that our people were treated very, very well. And we had one cultural event after another, one dinner after another, one outing after another. Really treated like kings and queens, our crew were when we went there.
Actually, I think we've got some footage of it that we can show. Yeah.
That was the captain there. And they were having a little dance in the quayside when the ship arrived in Libya. You see, it was quite a welcome there, and I hope you don't see me being thrown up in the air by the Boy Scouts. They took the liberty of throwing me up several times as well. So it's quite amazing. Of course, there are a few Christian churches for expats in Tripoli, and I remember even before the ship came, going along to one, and my host decided they would stay outside and just watch over me in case I'm in any danger going into that building as well. And I remember being in the church and everybody coming up to me asking afterwards, are you with the ship? Because he'd seen posters about the ship coming. It was quite something. And can you give us literature? Well, of course, we had to be very careful, censorship, what literature we had on board as well. But our hosts were very keen to please us. So they said to me, oh, is everything going okay? Is everything going fine? So, oh, thank you, everything's going so well, thank you very much. Are you sure? Is there anything you need? Well, there is just one small thing. And what would that be? No, it really doesn't matter. I said, yeah, we're keen to know. Well, you know we normally have other sort of literature in our holds on board the ship. It's just that some of the local contacts are keen to have some copies of that other literature that we have. Just wait. And then we will get back to you within 24 hours. So 24 hours later, they come back and say, could you give us a list of that literature that you would like to donate to these people on shore? So then I say, here's the list. And then, so we were given permission to donate Christian literature to the churches. And they say that the permission had to come from the Gaddafi family for that to happen. But the ship went to Benghazi. And only then could we get this literature off the ship. And our hosts were very, very nervous about this whole thing. So they placed all this Christian literature in the middle of educational literature, which was all being sent back by land over to Tripoli at the end of the visit. So I waved bye-bye to the ship, then went back to Tripoli, and then we couldn't find the literature. The transport company, we didn't know. So then we realized, oh, no, it's another transport company. They'd taken it someplace else. So we got the literature from them. Then we took it to an old supermarket that was completely closed down. We put all these boxes of Christian books and Bibles into old trolleys and took them down, to where the cars would go down into the car park and kept them there. Then we went off to the censors to say, we've got the literature, which should go to the churches. And I remember the censor, the chief censor, looking at our host and saying, why are you helping these people in this way, bringing this literature into our country? And he answered back, I would like to think that I, as a Muslim, would be permitted to bring a copy of the Quran to a fellow Muslim in Europe. And surely they should be permitted to bring copies of their holy book to their people in Tripoli. Well, they kept the books for about 6 months, but finally the churches got the literature which they needed.
Wow. Yeah. I was talking to a colleague and he said that may be the largest Christian event in 1,500 years in that country.
It was
absolutely
quite amazing. And till this day, even just a few weeks ago, I got a video call from who used to be the right-hand man of Dr. Aisha Gaddafi, who was the patron of our visits to Libya. That's the daughter of Muammar Gaddafi. So I'm still in contact with people from there.
Amazing.
Like family.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ronnie.
Yeah.
Now, having been so long in the ministry, you should probably, one or two facts and figures, I'm sure, about Logos 2 and about Doulos and all the other ships that we've had.
I mixed up all 4 ships.
So we're going to go back for a minute to some of our questions that I read out earlier, and let's see if how well Ronnie knows Logos 2. So how well does Ronnie Lappin know Logos 2? So here's number 1 here, Ronnie. What was the largest number of visitors to Logos 2 in a single day? You got any ideas what that would be?
I am lost on this one, but I can tell you what is probably the largest number of visitors on the first day the ship was open in one port.
Okay.
Was probably 9,800 people in Gdynia, the first day the ship was open in Poland.
Okay, well, Jaron, just to reveal the answer to us, it's actually more than 8,000. It's 13,000. I think that was in West Africa somewhere, maybe been in Ghana somewhere, but that's apparently what the statistics say. Yep. 13,000. Okay, what was the longest voyage of Logos 2? I was actually on that voyage with my wife.
Probably from Barbados down to Buenos Aires.
Mar del Plata.
Mar del Plata.
Mar del Plata, yeah. 21 days. Barbados to Mar del Plata with a fueling stop actually in Port of Spain in Trinidad, and I remember it well. The ground was moving when we landed in Argentina. Question 3, where was if you don't know this one now, Ronnie, I'll tell you. Where was the Logos 2 registered? Malta, Singapore, the UK, or in Germany?
Faroe Islands.
The Faroe
Malta.
Malta, all right. Question number 4, when was the Logos 2 built? 60, 65, 68, or 1970?
Yeah. 68?
68, the year you were born, right, yeah. Number 5, what was the number of crew and staff? This is a bit tricky, I'll be surprised if you know this one. What was the number of crew and staff beds on board? Was it 200, 208, 214 or 220?
I would say 220.
220, 214.
Okay.
Yeah, 214, a couple of guest beds probably that you're thinking of there as well. And lastly, okay, I've said this already. What was the name of the Logos 2 before we purchased the vessel? And it was...
Antonio Lazaro.
The Antonio Lazaro. Well done. You can stay with us for a while longer. Great. Right. One of the people who also has had a lot of experience with the Logos 2 is Lawrence Tong. Lawrence Tong from Singapore, and I caught up with him again recently and asked him about his memories of his and his family's time on board the Logos 2 back in the 90s. Well, Lawrence, thank you for just being with us today, for taking the time back in Singapore again now. It's great to see you again. You and Susan, of course, have a long history with OM. You're now the international director at the moment, but you've done a lot of other things before that as well, and a lot of time you've spent with the ship's ministry. Just tell us for a moment how you got involved with the ship's ministry in the beginning.
Yeah, certainly, and it's good to reconnect with you again, and I'm very thankful for this interview that we could do together. The ship will always have a pivotal part in my life. My introduction to world mission is actually through the visit of the Logos in 1974. When the Logos visited Singapore, I was then a young Christian, visited the ship, and what I saw on board the ship captured my imagination. Young men, young women forsaking everything, coming together and serving their lives and giving their all to the Lord Jesus Christ. I gravitated towards that, and I spent a lot of time with the ship people, visiting them. And then in 1978, I made the bold step and joined OM, and first serving on the Doulos for 5 years, and then later on the Logos for 5 years as well.
Wow, yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, so you've seen and experienced all of our ships, but we're zooming in today on Logos 2. Logos 2 is the ship we want to feature in this series of live broadcasts that we're doing to commemorate 50 years of OM ships. And it was today, on the 24th of April, that we purchased the Logos 2. And I want to ask you about your experiences on Logos 2, because you were the director on board the Logos 2 for a number of years. Tell us how that came to be.
Yes, the Logos too will always have a special place in my heart and also in the hearts of my family members. Susan and I, soon after our marriage in 1989, my wife Susan, and we joined the Logos too after it was launched. You know, the ship went through a period of repair in Amsterdam. It was launched into ministry, and then we were sent to Poland to do lineup. That was quite a memorable experience for us. Introduced us to the world that we live in at that time, the changing world. We went into Poland when Jaruzelski, the general, was in charge, and in the midst of it all, Lech Wałęsa became the president. So we saw the whole turnover, the change, the transitions, and then the Logos 2 came and brought a whole new spectrum of ministry to that part of the world. So that was my introduction to the Logos 2. Yeah. And then we spent several more months with the Logos 2, did lineup in Tenerife, and soon Susan and I felt that it is time for us, after 14 years, to take a break from OM. So we left OM ships towards the end of, I think, 1990. December 17, 1990, we left the ministry and spent 10 years in Singapore. We were still involved in the OM ministry, but probably from the side, in the peripheral, helping raise funds and recruit some people into the ministry. But then in the year 2000, when the doulos was in Singapore, and we by that time were very involved with OM again, and Ben Gooker, the CEO of OM Ships at that time, came to Singapore, took us out for dinner, and then he mentioned to me that there is a tremendous need for someone who can lead the Logos 2, and he asked if I would be willing to consider and pray about this offer. And Susan and I, by that time, we were ready. We felt that it was the right thing, and we didn't have to pray a lot. It didn't take a lot of convincing. We just loved the ministry of OM Ships. And so we, after I think a few weeks, we called Ben and says, yeah, we will go back with the ship ministry. And so in April of 2001, we rejoined OM through the Logos 2 and became the ship director.
Wow. And where did you spend your time on board when you were sailing around the world? What countries were you in? What region?
Yeah, we started with Northern Europe, the Scandinavian areas, and we moved into Western Europe and then down to Latin America. But we spent a good bit of time in the Caribbean. So the Caribbean region was the what do you call, the place where we will go to and then launch from the Caribbean to the Latin America, back to the Caribbean, and then into Central America, back again. So it was like the place that we will always go back to every other. It was great for us. I mean, we had this ministry there.
Now, a bit of a hard question for you, because there's probably been so many stories, and you know, you've experienced so much of God doing amazing things through the ship's ministry. But if you would have to single out like one particular ministry story of your and Susan's time on board Logos 2, tell us about it. Which one would it be?
Yeah, you know, there were so many highlights, Andy. I without exaggerations, I think every port is a highlight to us, because God was doing amazing things through the ship ministry. But the one that stuck the most was probably the visit to Grenada soon after the island was hit by Hurricane Ivan. We were in Trinidad at that time, and we heard of the hurricane. We even felt the hurricane 200 miles away. And so the captain and some of the leaders and I got together, and we felt very strongly that we must respond. You know, we say we bring help, hope, and knowledge to the people of the world. And that moment, the Caribbean, the island of Grenada needed help. And we cannot simply sail away without responding to the help. And so I don't know how to do it. So the first thing I suggested was that we approach the Air Force in Trinidad and see if they would fly us to survey the damages in Grenada. You know, this is a wild imagination, and yet the Air Force responded and said, yes, we have space for 3 people. And we sent 3 people They flew with the Air Force plane and landed in Grenada, and they came back with a report and said, Lawrence, we cannot ignore the situations. We must do something. And so the thing went is that we got permission. We went to Liat Airlines, and I want to give credit to them, Leeward Island Aviation Transport. We told them that we have a group of young people on board, and we would like them to sponsor us free air tickets so that we can fly to Grenada to help build homes and repair broken homes. And the airline came back and gave us 10 tickets every week, return tickets, flying 10 people from anywhere in the Caribbean island to the Grenada and back again.
Wow.
And so,
amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And so the ship people were so highly motivated. And we told them that you got to keep the ship really nice and clean before we allow you to leave. The chief engineer, Onihuti, he told me, he says, I have never seen the ship engine room so clean. Everybody wanted to go. And so what happened is, while they were repairing the ports, we were visiting other islands. We have our ministry and our obligations to fulfill, but we were running a parallel ministry. The ship was visiting Trinidad and nearby islands, while every week we will fly 10 people to Grenada. And 2 months later, when the port was repaired, we brought the ship in, and we were there for 3 weeks, and 200 young people to team up with Samaritan Purse and other organizations, and we went in and rebuilt. I think we rebuilt about 220 homes in those time, and it was beautiful. The ship young people, they gravitate towards that. The ship, it was a living testimony of our faith and our love of God for these people. And we even went further. We opened up the bookshop, the book fair on board, and we invited all Christian leaders and all pastors to come on board and just pick up any books that they wanted to complete, the pastors' library. Many of them lost their books. Many of the schools and seminaries and churches lost their hymn books and all that. And whatever we had on board, we donated it to them as a love offering. Yeah, and God used it in an amazing way, because I have met people everywhere I went in Grenada. They all just, strangers will stop me and say, thank you. You have never forgotten us. And I think we have enjoyed the hospitality and the friendship with these islands ever since. But it was a beautiful thing. To me, that was a highlight to see ship people going out, giving out their energy, pouring everything that they have to bring the love of God to the people of this island. And that was a highlight to me. And that was the thing I remember the most.
Wow, fantastic story, Lawrence. Thanks for that. That's very, very inspiring, and I'm sure only heaven will tell, really, just some of the amazing stories that have come out of the ministry of the Logos 2. Just one final thing for you here. As you know, this is a series of live links that we're doing to commemorate 50 years of ministry of OM ships, right way back to 1971. And just wanted to hear from you again. I mean, each ship has its own legacy. We talked about Logos last time. Now we're talking about Logos 2. In a couple of weeks' time, a few months' time, we'll talk about the Doulos. But what would you say for you, as having been the director on board and lived on board with your family, is the unique contribution of that ship, the Logos 2, to world missions, not just in Latin America, but in other places as well?
Yeah, Andy, I want to just pause to say congratulations to the ship crew and staff and the leaders of OM Ships Ministry for this 50 years of wonderful ministry. This is an amazing testimony. And I also want to say this to the glory of God, that I have known intimately with the Ships Ministry and serving with you all for many years. I marvel that in these 50 years, we never had to stop because God stopped providing. The amazing provisions of God and his faithfulness to the ship ministry is all over the place. It's recognizable. And I say that also to credit the ship leaders for the good work they have done. To me, I believe in the ship ministry. I think the ship is a wonderful, practical platform where young people could come and be trained for active Christian ministry or for active Christian life. It is a safe environment. You make mistakes, you're forgiven, you learn new things. We take risks with our young people. When I was a ship director, running a book fair, it's a multi-million-dollar ministry, just selling books and all this. And we had a girl, a young lady, and she was not even 23 years old, and she is running the department. And I don't know of any company in the world that will take that kind of risk. But we did, and she did a fantastic job, managing 40 people and welcoming close to several 100,000 visitors a year to the book fair. And so the ship is a wonderful platform for spiritual development and opportunities for growth and for leadership training. And I have traveled to many different places. I met many ship graduates, alumni of OM Ship Ministry. And it is a joy to me to see that many of these people are in Christian ministry, full-time, part-time, every one of them that I met are walking with the Lord and actively participating in church ministries in different parts of the world. And that is the testimony. You judge the tree by the fruits they produce. Sure. The ship ministry has produced wonderful fruits around the world. And I think that is a powerful testimony of the ship's ministry.
Wonderful words. Thank you so much, Lawrence, for taking the time to be with us. Greetings to Susan and your family, and look forward to seeing you again sometime. Thanks for being with us. Amazing the fruit that the ship's ministry has produced in the past and continues to produce today, and I'm sure will do into the future as well. And we want to make a bit of a shift now and look to the modern day and into the future as well. And it's great that Seelan has joined me. Welcome to you, Seelan. It's good to have you with us. Seelan is the CEO of OM Ships. Him and his wife, Carleen, and their children, Tessa and Milan, they live here in Mosbach with us. Now, Seelan, your experience with the ship's ministry is long and considerable as well. A lot of your time was actually spent on the Doulos.
That's right, yes.
Yeah. And I asked Lawrence a question earlier on about the legacy of the Logos 2. And what would you say, how would you answer that question as to the legacy of the Logos 2 ministry?
Yeah, thank you, Andy. I have not had the privilege of actually being on board the Logos 2, but I did do a survey for the ship in West Africa. And I think the legacy, as we heard the stories over this evening, our time here, from different people around the world, is really the story of God and His people. Each individual story, each experience talks about a powerful God using ordinary people. Yeah. So when I think of the legacy of Logos 2, I look at all the people joining us online, and each one has some link with the ship in some way or form. Yeah. And it's a story of God in their lives and their journey through the ship. So the legacy for me very much is how God is transforming the lives of people and communities.
Yeah, true. Well, we talked a lot about the past, and we want to just make a little bit of a shift now, because we live life forwards, and it's great to reminisce on the past and the wonderful things that God has done, but I think there are even greater things ahead for us. So where is the ship right now at the moment, for those that don't know?
Yeah, I presume we're talking about the Logos Hope and not the Logos 2.
We can.
The Logos Hope currently is in Curacao. We're actually going through our dry docking. After we couldn't do that last year due to the pandemic, we have the opportunity to do it right now in Curacao, and we are in our dry dock mode, and many of us would know that experience where we have our families on shore. Right now we have about 3 or 4 teams working and engaged with some churches on the island, and a large majority of our people are actually on board doing some of the practical work.
Okay. Now again, we heard lots of stories this evening about just being in the right place at the right time. Now there was an incident just a couple of weeks ago that I want to just ask you about for a moment, because we were in Curacao and then the ship sailed to St. Vincent, and if you watch the news, of course you may well have heard about this volcano that erupted, and that was right about the time, literally, right, that the Logos 2 was sailing there. I think we might have a photo. Yeah, we got a couple of photos of it there. Just tell us how that came to be, and just on why the Logos 2 was Logos Hope was actually there at that time.
Yeah, we were praying. We had already been in St. Vincent before arriving in Curacao. We were there for about 5 or 6 weeks, and incredible hospitality of the government of St. Vincent, giving us the opportunity to be there. We had hoped that we would engage with a few communities, but due to the pandemic, it was not as possible for us. So we had sailed to Curacao, and the government of St. Vincent offered us the opportunity to help us with the COVID and vaccinations, in which they counted us as part of their population, and were very generous coming from the very top. The Prime Minister himself, together with the Minister of Health, had been very generous to invite us to come and offer us vaccines, and that has been our plan, to go there to get that. And hours before we were about to sail, of course, the volcano erupts. And of course, we had a dilemma. You know, we had seen this picture, we had heard the stories and the news. There were ash falling everywhere, there were people being evacuated. And as we prayed together, we felt that it was right for us to go because there was a community in need. And I still remember reading on Friday the Prime Minister's address to the United Nations currently. And his last words is, "Will you come and help us in our midnight hour of need?"
Wow.
That was his plea currently to the United Nations. But when we were there, we said we want to go. Of course, part of that was to take up this offer from the Ministry of Health, but also to pray and do whatever we could, thinking we had a little so we could donate some water filters. But when we arrived there, you know, I just stand amazed at how the community got together and started to think about how they can help the community. Of course, the water was the biggest challenge, potable water, drinkable water. And in the end, I am so impressed, really praise the Lord for the community on board, the leaders on board, that has decided to donate 125,000 liters of our fresh water that we make, together with water filters, together with some food items, together with tracts, together with praying for kids, etc. There were banana boats coming to the quayside, on the other side of the quayside, and with the little containers getting water. And the wives on board decided to make a page and ask everyone on board the ship, whoever has a spare bottle, water bottle, bring it out. In the end, you know, we left our lineup team there, but the stories of God's Kairos moment, we were under tremendous pressure for not going because it was unstable. Somehow God had us there for that exact time to respond to a community of people that were in desperate need, still are in desperate need. And the stories of our own crew and staff experiencing this at this time just made them again stand in awe of this great God we serve.
Now I understand that this practical, holistic, this integral mission that we just saw so powerfully demonstrated there in St. Vincent is going to be a feature of the ship's ministry as we move forward into the future. So can you just tell us a little bit about that for a minute?
Yeah, as we consider this pandemic has caused us to reflect. You know, we know that the way we have operated the ministry is significantly being impacted with thousands and thousands coming on the quayside. I'm not so sure when we will see that again, but it's caused us to reflect and to ask the question, how do we truly engage people with this understanding of the kingdom of God? And how do we understand the kingdom of God? We proclaim the love of Jesus, which we absolutely must. But I think more and more we are starting to realize that it's not the proclamation of the love of Jesus that is needed. It's much more the demonstration of the love of Jesus. As you proclaim the love of Jesus, it has to be backed up, James says, by the demonstration of the love. And when we consider this holistic feature of mission, you know, the gospel was never meant to be segmented. The gospel in its form is holistic because it touches every part of society and community. And so we want to focus much more on how do we engage longer, engage deeper, build relationship with vulnerable, marginalized community, proclaiming who Jesus is, demonstrating what he has done for us and our care and concern for those people around us. And that's where we are learning to pivot and take more steps in understanding how we do that.
So, Seelan, as we look to the next 5 to 10 years of the ministry, I mean, what are some of the things that just, in a sense, drive you forward? What are the? I mean, I know some of what your passion and your vision are, but maybe for those that are watching tonight, just tell us some of your goals, some of your vision for the future of the ship's ministry.
Yeah, I think Andy, what we are experiencing is that through these stories, history is very important. We should never forget history, because history helps us understand where we are and prepares us for where we want to go. So we never discount what God has been doing through the Logos too, and the incredible years of leaders, of ordinary people, many of whom we do not know the name of, by the way. that God has been working. So for us, the important thing is that the ship ministry has always been a catalyst in the lives of people and communities.
Yeah.
Looking forward, it will always continue to be that. Our focus will be, how do we intentionally use that catalyst to see people coming on board or in contact with the ship ministry being impacted as a disciple maker for Jesus, so that we can really come to terms with how do we respond to the reality of 3 billion people not having the opportunity to hear and understand and respond to the love of Jesus as you and I do. That's the world we live in. So we can celebrate what God has been doing as a catalyst through the ship ministries. Through the ship ministry, God will continue to do that. But we want to focus actively on how do we multiply these disciple makers through the encounter on board the ship. And that's being present. Disciple maker for us is being present, loving God, loving your neighbor, doing good work that God has created for us to do. We become the visible expression of the kingdom of God when we do that, and teaching others to do likewise. And we want people to go do this among least reached communities, 3 billion people. Our desire is to see churches mobilized, 1 million of them. Our desire is to see prayers raised up, people praying persistently for these communities. And in the end, to work in collaboration and partnerships with everyone to see God's people reached with the love of Jesus in communities today that are desperately in need. And they must experience the holistic understanding of the kingdom of God, that it makes sense here and now as well as in the future.
Yeah, sure. Wow. Celine, one final question for you, just take you back to the present for the moment. I'm sure when you signed up to be CEO, you would have never envisaged some of these unprecedented times that we're living through and you're having to lead this ministry through. But can I just ask you again, I mean, there have been incredible opportunities that the pandemic has produced for us, undoubtedly, as a ministry, but there are also incredible challenges. I mean, the ship's ministry and the Logos Hope has effectively remained closed for the majority of public ministry over the last year. What are some of the urgent needs that we really do have as a ministry, and how can people that are watching this evening maybe respond to that?
Yeah, thank you, Andy. I think, what I want to say first is that so many of the people that are watching online, and I'm reading some of the comments, have got a strong affiliation to either serving on board or with people. And I want to make clear that you are still very much a part of the team. You may not be serving on board the ship or officially in OM ships, but I do want to state that you are very much still a part of the team, because the task before us is greater than any one organization.
Absolutely.
So my deep desire is for people to understand that whatever they learned on board the ship, that God would give them the grace and mercy to multiply that wherever they are. And my desire would be in least reached communities. As you think about the needs, some of our urgent needs, I would love for people to continue daily to pray for the ship ministry. I think Dale has talked about it. This ministry continues to run on prayer as we discern what the Lord is doing in these days. So first and foremost, if I can challenge people to pray this week, at least for 5 minutes every day for the ship ministry, I would love that. Secondly, I would love for people to come and join us. Many people have been on the chat talking about these experiences, and within your networks and spaces of influence, would you pray and ask the Lord to lead you to someone, to invite them to come and join the ship ministry for this time? Yes, we understand it's challenging, but nevertheless, God is at work. So we would love, we have about nearly 50 people in the pipeline to join us in September. We would love to see another 50 more join us. I'm praying much for that. So if you know of people that would really benefit through serving on board the Logos Hope, as they grow in their faith, in their understanding of who God is, the world is created, and their part in it, I would love for you to come and send them our way, send them to the website, write to me. I would love to connect with them. That's our greatest need right now, is prayer and people. And of course, we want to ask people to continue to financially support us. These are challenging days, but the Lord has been faithful, and partners have graciously continued to journey with us. Romans 15, this morning I was reading, talks about may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust Him. Through the stories that I've heard this evening, it's a story of God drawing His people to trust Him, this God of hope.
Yeah.
We live in a world where many do not know this God of hope. My prayer is that as we follow God, that we want to encourage as many people as possible to join us as we learn together. We are not so much teaching, but we want to learn what God is doing, and we want others to join us to learn that. So we would love to see more people join us. We would love to see people praying for us. We would love to see people contributing financially to us.
Wow, great. Well, thanks, Helen, for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. We want to just, as we finish up tonight, go back to where we started, back to the Logos 2. As Seelan was saying, that was a message as well, that preaching this God of hope, the living, lasting, loving God that ministry declared loud and far for 18 years. And we put a little presentation together of all the different ports that the Logos 2 went to over those 18 years, 184 ports, would you believe that? So we've just, to finish up this evening, we've got a short presentation for you of all of those different ports that Logos 2 went to in those 18 years. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. I hope you've really enjoyed it, and it's taken you down a bit of memory lane. We certainly have enjoyed putting it together and giving you the opportunity to just feature some of the ministry of Logos 2 this evening. And I want to invite you to join us in June. We've talked about the Logos, we've talked about the Logos 2, and the next one of our ships that is up for some reflection is the Doulos. And we're going to be taking some time in June. We'll let you know the dates of that nearer the time. So if you were on board the Doulos, or if you either as a crew member, or maybe you visited, or you've just maybe read the Doulos story, yeah, more than welcome to join us. And as I said, we'll let you know in due time when exactly in June that one will be. So thanks again for all your prayers, for your support. And as we end this evening, we have some other old footage again called Meet the Logos 2. They'll just give you again just some more insights into the ministry in various parts of the world. But thanks for joining us this evening. We really appreciate your prayers and your support. Trust you'll have a good evening or a good rest of the day wherever you are, and may God bless you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hello and welcome to Logos 2, an international ship which sails around the world, sharing the precious message of the gospel with many people in many countries.
This 4,000-ton ship was originally built as a ferry and operated for 20 years between Spain and North Africa. Purchased in 1988 and renamed Logos 2, major refitting was carried out in preparation for her new service. Decks and storage spaces were extended and rebuilt to make way for a book exhibition, extra cabins, conference halls, dining facilities and a play area for the children on board. And so in 1990, a gleaming restored Logos 2 proudly sailed from Amsterdam on her way to new adventure and Christian service. The Logos 2 is no ordinary ship. 200 people from 35 nations around the world live and work together on board. The officers and crew are highly skilled and fully qualified to operate this ocean-going vessel. The staff of mostly young people share a responsible and active role in the running of Logos 2. The captain on the bridge, the engineers, carpenters, teachers, cooks, whether their task is menial or complex, all are volunteers, and many have left well-paid jobs to work with this project. They're also all committed Christians who are giving their time and energy to serve God in this unique way.
One of the many areas of ministry on board is the huge book exhibition, which is open to the public every day Logos 2 is in port.
Thousands of titles covering a wide variety of subjects are made available for sale, from cookery, health, science, general education and children's books, to Bibles and Christian teaching materials. This literature project has made a significant contribution to the educational needs and development of many countries. Thousands of people walk up the gangway and find a book that will make a difference to their life or community. Below deck, many more tons of books are kept in store for the pre-packing of giveaway material, the restocking of the book display above deck, and for future ports of call. Back on deck, visitors to the ship will find the coffee shop. It provides refreshment and a place to relax or talk with members of the crew. While there's a lot of activity in the book exhibition, there may be a seminar, reception or training program taking place inside the ship. Numerous conferences are held on board, offering practical teaching and instruction to the local community. Whether the topic is basic health care or Christian discipleship, these meetings are well attended and greatly appreciated. The culture of each new country adds a splash of colour and enthusiasm. But there's more to Logos 2 than first meets the eye. This international project is an expression of the Christian faith of all on board.
First of all, each day commences with a time of devotion and prayer.
I'm going to weave in a little report from my time in Turkey. What did he tell us to do?
Living and working together in a confined space isn't easy. It's a learning and life-changing experience. The crew learn to respect and appreciate one another and other cultures. Lives are changed through love, patience, and understanding. This is possible only because of the dynamic relationship each person has with God. Logos 2 is like a city at sea. Every day is extremely busy. Round-the-clock maintenance is undertaken by teams of deckhands, welders, painters, all working together to make sure Logos 2 is kept in a seaworthy condition. The heart of Logos 2 is its engine room, staffed by competent and qualified personnel, constantly keeping a watch over the diesel engines which drive the twin propellers when the ship puts to sea. To keep Logos 2 alive electrically, its generators are running constantly, even in port. The ship people have the same needs as those on shore. There's a well-equipped clinic with a doctor and nurse who attend to everyone in need of medical care.
How much did he weigh when he was born?
A nursery provides for preschool activities. Qualified teachers supervise the play deck as well as the formal education of older children. Whether at work or play, the need for clean clothes and bed linen is always there. And so there's a fully equipped laundry operated by willing workers.
This is one of the busiest departments on board ship, where hundreds of meals are prepared.
A bakery and galley cater daily for this hungry crew. Under the direction of the chief steward, supplies are kept in refrigerated holds. Fresh fruit and vegetables are purchased from local markets. It's quite a challenge to satisfy the tastes of such an international crew. Personal training is encouraged by the availability of a comprehensive library covering a vast array of topics, not only in book form, but through dozens of teaching tapes. And for those who like an adventurous Keep Fit program, there's nothing quite like a pre-breakfast jog along the quayside, setting the pace for the day. Communication is an important aspect of ship life. An audio-visual department creates program material to complement conference and teaching sessions. Trained personnel handle the administrative details of this international project. This includes regular contact with government officials, as well as the production of news releases and other publicity materials. Thousands of letters also keep family and friends in touch with everyone on board. Vital contact with the outside world is maintained through fax, radio and telex communications within the radio room. The entire ship project is an expression of an overall commitment of those on board to share something even more important than an adventure, a valuable book, or an international friendship.
Our aim is to know God and to make Him known. We know God through our personal Bible study on board, but also through our study and training program that we have, where we understand God better and through that also ourselves. We make Him known through our book exhibition that we have on board, especially through the Christian literature. We make Him also known through our community of 200 people from over 35 different countries and denominations who have the aim to demonstrate that God is alive and that we can live in love and harmony in a world that is falling apart.
Logos 2 sails from port to port, bringing this message of God's love and concern to a world in need.
Thank you so much for allowing us to share the ministry of Logos 2.